All right, recording is started, and this is the October 11th, 2023 SIG Developer Experience meeting. We have most of the agenda for today is going to be talking about everything that is left for 1.14 and try to talk through maybe some outstanding PRs and decisions we should make as well. I think we've got, a quorum here to make some decisions and move forward on stuff. So I think this should be pretty productive, and we'll see if we need all the time here. I'll drop a link right now into the Zoom chat so folks can directly access the agenda doc if you are not already in there. But there's definitely room for folks to add their own agenda topics and items as well. So feel free to add stuff in there, folks. All right, but let's get started then on 1.14 status check, because we are exactly 1 week away from code freeze for V1.14. So we don't have a lot of time left to wrap up any of the outstanding items. So let's see what we have and see what's left. So Philippe, I feel like I'm sort of caught up here, but I think you're the most up to date on everything that's going on. So do you want to kind of walk us through, some of the recent progress and then like the risks and things that are, the status of things that aren't done yet, man?
Yeah, sure. So we merged, so we started moving over stuff from the app CLI, so the X-package command, X-package build and X-package push commands were already merged and moved over to Crossplane. There is now we moved them changing as little as possible just to have a starting point. But now it felt like we were starting to discuss switching maybe verb and resources. So you already have a point. So that's still an open discussion to be had. But let's say a working implementation supporting functions is already in there. So that's something we already have. And then there are a few PRs in flight about the scaffold, so the init from the template directory, which also the discussion about switching resources and verbs could apply. So based on that discussion, these other PRs could be slightly modified. No big changes. It's mostly switching a few things here and there, and it should be fine. And then I also opened a PR for the Xrender, for moving Xrender under the Crossplane CLI. It was pretty smooth. Obviously, Nick did a great job using the same technologies we are already using and the same libraries we are already using in Crossplane itself and the CLI itself. So it was pretty straightforward. We changed the name from Xrender to Render because it was it made sense to call it just a Crossplane Render and then the rest of the arguments. And then there are in flight a few PRs around the diagnose command. I feel like it's probably won't make it for the code freeze. And if I recall correctly, there was some discussion about extending or like it's functionalities that don't actually affect Crossplane itself in the CLI could land even after the code freeze or the feature freeze at least, given that they don't touch actual production code or actual Crossplane code, but it's just alpha functionalities or beta functionalities in the CLI itself. So if that's the case and we decide that's something we want to allow, maybe we can get in also the diagnose command. Otherwise, I think that's going to be a little bit of a stretch to get into 1.14.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary there, Philippe. So thanks for catching everybody up here on all of that. Yeah, I think a lot of stuff is in flight right now still, and a lot of things are landing. So I think most of it seems pretty doable, right? Like like the init function stuff, like that seemed like fairly complete, and some loose ends to figure out. And Nick was helped out a lot with getting the X render functionality originally there. The documentation stuff, that all can be done after code freeze, so we gotta focus on docs while we're in the feature freeze is this Wednesday, and code freeze is the following Wednesday. But we can do docs throughout all of that time up until the release, so not worried about that either. But yeah, then Diagnose has the most functionality. I think Jonas got a really good start on like implementing all that off on his own there. So I think that's more like alignment on, hey, what is the user experience that we want to have in the community tool here, and kind of getting aligned on that. But I think Jonas isn't just getting started with the code today, so that is a really good place to be in for that. But yeah, we'll see what we can do to get that in, and try to the best things we can do for to support Jonas will be that'll be the right approach of quick feedback and quick iterations, and don't let that just kind of sit there without some support for moving that along.
Yeah, I just noticed there was an issue build and compile and push functions to registry. I think we have a build and push part, but the compile is still an open point, which we were discussing today. I mean, the compile as in what Nick was suggesting earlier today about take the Docker file and actually build the container itself and make it a smoother first user, a smoother experience for new users of functions, instead of having to build first the function with a Docker file and Docker, and then building the package pointing to that container image.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. That's a good point, and we'll talk about that, or like in the context of all of that feedback, I guess. But yeah, really good point on that. Okay, sweet. So yeah, overall for 1.14, we have a lot to push through the next week, and to get to the finishing point for this release. But I'm really happy with everything we've done so far, and where we've gotten so far. So there's a lot to be proud of there. And then I think that kind of segues nicely into talking about PRs that are open right now, and see if we can kind of make some progress on those, because I think these let me reorder these a little bit. So I think that at least in the agenda doc that we have right now, by far the most important things to me this week is nailing down everything we can for 1.14. That's P0 for me right now. And so I think it is a good usage of our time to go ahead and try to unblock ourselves on any of these PRs that have open discussions around them. So see if we can just get to some answers and resolutions on those together right now within the synchronous group. That's a good usage of our time, I think. And then the feedback from Nick there, that's things we can consider doing over the until and including in 1.14. So that's pretty reasonable to talk about and prioritize in the meeting here. But then the other stuff, like some of it is kind of relevant to 1.14 as well, but it's more forward looking also. So I would think we could save those for the end. But I think jumping right into open issues on open PRs is a good usage of our time. So Philippe, I don't think, have you gotten any feedback yet on the render command, or this is more like, hey, this is a PR that needs some looks? Oh, it looks like some people have been talking about it so far.
I left a few open questions, and Nick gave a few opinions on there, and I think it's mostly done. The only open question which I didn't mention there, because it came to me after writing it, so I still have to drop it down, is okay, right now we have, this is as you can see from the description, I updated the description with the latest no, that's the init function, sorry, mixing up a few PRs now, but it's actually crank or crossplane beta render, and then all the arguments. Do we want to have it beta functions and then render? Do we want to have the functions part or not. That's the only thing missing. Otherwise, the code is actually the same as Xrender, so it's actually, there is not much to check on that. Maybe it could, its code coverage is missing, is complaining a little bit about the test coverage, so I can improve on that for sure. But other than that, it's mostly missing just these details about naming things, which is always hard.
Like, and that's like the naming things as in like the structure of the
Yeah.
commands, like
Yeah.
the final names for them, like the ordering of them, the hierarchy of the
Yeah.
commands and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay, cool. That sounds good. We can get into that in a kind of a general conversation, I think, later on in the
Yes.
agenda. But okay, so that's everything on the render PR here. And so yeah, this is this is the only one I think that I didn't get to take a pass on myself last night. So that'll be something that I want to get through today and get some eyes on this as well too, Philippe.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, and then a init function. Let's see, what are the outstanding things in here? I did take a pass at this myself yesterday. And then I'm sure during your day today that you were already back on it. So you want to catch me up on this one too then, man?
Yeah, I fixed that you actually found out I was using the wrong repository as a source, so it's actually, I fixed that. And you were mentioning, yeah, yes, I wasn't testing the actual template, I was testing more, it's cloned, so it's fine. And I added the link as you suggested, which feels like a good thing to do. To the output, I mean. So yeah, you get this, and you can click on that link, and you go to the also the branch which we are actually using, etc., etc. So it will show which branch we are using.
Nice.
I think it's mostly done. Again, here probably naming things like, do we want init functions, or do we want functions init? Again, same thing. More than that, I don't think there is. I still have to get to the existing files handling. That's something I still need to address, which was one of your comments. So that's the only open point. Naming things again, and handling existing files and refusing to templatize and initialize a directory which already has some files. Which the only point I was not sure about is whether we want to allow some directories, like for example, if we what's the starting point we expect people to have. I mean, I think having some kind of having no constraints at all is obviously too difficult case to handle, at least as a first iteration. So that's out of scope for sure, as you suggested. But maybe a Git repository, an empty Git repository could be okay to handle. So maybe like if there is a .git folder, we could accept that. We are not going to overwrite it. We don't care about the .git folder because we just write the files, not the actual repository. So it's actually something we could say we are fine. Then what other files could we accept? Or do we want to take it in the other way and say, if there is something we are trying to overwrite, we back off and we say, we would overwrite this file, but we won't because it should be an initialization thing, and we won't do that. So that's the only open question I have at the moment.
Yeah. So help me understand real quick, Philippe. When we do the programmatically in the implementation of this command, when we do like the clone get clone-ish operation, that does not, are you saying that does not like also like tie it to the upstream, like the repository where it goes cloned from? Okay, it's just the files itself.
Yes, exactly. Because
is that an option that we specify or something? Is that like
yes, it's an option. It's because
what is it?
If you git clone there, and I'm passing to the git clone memory new storage, which is actually saying the Git part has to be kept in memory, but use this file system, which is actually the directory you specified as the, let's say, final result. So your current checked out code ends up in the file system at the moment, which is, we could probably wrap to avoid overwriting existing files in some way, while the rest is kept in memory and thrown away as soon as you exit the function.
I see. Okay, so that's how that works. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, dude, I would be fine then with like if like with pretty much just the existence of a .git folder. If there's already a .git folder there, like as in you've initialized an empty repository and maybe you've got like some remotes that it's, you know, kind of connected to and stuff like that. And then like if that's the case, then cool, you already know where you're going to be pushing it to, and we can clone all the file content into that directory and not have a conflict there, and that's all good. But then maybe anything beyond that, like that's just a minute, like I think that'll get, we will there's scenarios we'll miss, I think.
Yeah.
So, you know, like somebody's
Exactly.
like, oh, well, I have a license folder. Oh, I have a notes.txt, or I have this. It's like, oh, we're just going to be like, oh, we missed that one. We missed that one. So that's pretty much the only thing I would commit to in this release is like, okay, if you got a .git, that's all good. Otherwise, it's got to be empty. And I'm fine with that.
Sounds good. Yeah, I agree. It's at least for the first iteration, makes sense.
Cool. Awesome, dude. So then, yeah, we'll talk about naming in a whole way once again. It's cool. Awesome. Then yes, I also just added my support too but yeah, spice it up with some emojis, and that's all good in my brain, man.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So that's that. And then Jonas, your awesome contribution here to add describe and you know eventually the diagnose stuff as well. We took a pass through it last night as well, and I'm sure that you've already replied and thought through it as well too. So do you want to catch us up with your thinking and where things are as well, Jonas?
Yeah, sure, of course. Like, I agree with the comment you posted with GoC. I didn't even think about it, to be honest, but I agree that then we shouldn't implement it probably. And the graph PNG function to print out the file actually isn't really required. Someone also replied that. So I think we could simply output the dot file output, and then people could render the file themselves. At least for first iteration, probably.
Oh, awesome. So and then what would that mean, like the operation that the user then has to do to render it? Is that like what would they have to do? Do they have to process it
if
further,
you scroll
or...
up a line, you just have to press a pipe and then
okay,
yeah.
right here.
It's pretty simple. You just have to do the sorry.
No, I was just saying that's actually also how the Go modules expect you to render the graph. If you ask the Go CLI to build the modules graph for a project, it just outputs a dot formatted and understandable stream, and then you can send it to dot and just render it however you want. So it feels like a pretty well-known approach.
Awesome. So I really like that then from the perspective of you know, having symmetry with like what the Go tools themselves do. I like that a lot. And I also really like, you know, not having to lose this functionality, right? Like, you know, I don't want to just throw out the functionality, because it's actually quite cool that we have this ability, but if we remove some of that, you know, complexity from in the tool and then move that to external tools to do the rendering and more complicated environments, maybe processor specific stuff, that sounds like a great approach, because we still get the functionality, but we don't have the complexity and perhaps fragility within the Crossplane CLI. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, I also agree. I can remove the graph then and then only output the dot format file.
Amazing. Okay, that sounds great. And then there's also the talk about like you know, table versus tree view stuff. Where were you guys with that one?
Yeah, me personally, I like the table, but I also understand the tree function. our idea. And that's just an example library or module I found to implement such function. So I wonder, like, what you were envisioning. Like, should it be a simple table or should it be like cube lineage, which is kind of a mix between a table and a tree?
Yeah, good point. Jonas, really good point, man. Yeah, I think for me, the most important aspect of a tree view is that, you know, it visually shows the relationships and like, you know, indentations from in the hierarchy, etc. Then I suppose with a tree view like that, though, it becomes more difficult to display extra information, you know, like fields and, you know, statuses and stuff like that. So I do think it's important to show the relationships here, show the hierarchy. So I think a tree is really important there, but I think I can kind of, maybe I would leave it to you, Jonas, in terms of like the complexity of the implementation. Because if it's like, maybe it's really hard to implement a tree view that then also shows extra information and sort of like a hybrid table sort of thing. That might be pretty hard to do. So I would err on the side of simplicity and expediting, like getting this functionality complete more quickly than doing something really complicated and challenging and fancy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. So yeah, we could probably, I wouldn't throw away the table view that we have right now. That's probably nice. We could probably do that, but I would like maybe a default view to be tree. And then, you know, that could be fairly simple of like, maybe it's the fully qualified names of the resources in the table view, you know, like the type, the GVK and the name. And so you can kind of see it like that. Maybe that makes sense. Philip, you came off mute. Did you have other ideas too?
No, I just wanted to mention, Jonas was pointing to Kubelineage. It's actually, as he was trying to say, it's actually doing this mixed table and tree view. So maybe deciding what we want with respect to that could be a good starting point, and saying, okay, we could be good with just the tree here, or we also maybe in this first iteration we just get the tree and then also add the rest of the table, or maybe not. So some differential, let's say, some comparison between what Kubelineage is already doing and what we actually want could be a good starting point for the discussion, probably.
Yep. I think that like a great cube lineage is probably the ideal here, where, you know, it shows the relationships here, it shows the hierarchy, which is really, really quite nice. But then it also does have, right, these other columns to standardize on the fields and values that it wants to show for each item. So that sounds like the ideal, but I have a feeling maybe there's some reusable logic that we can borrow to make that easier. But if there's not, I would say it's not a requirement to implement all of this. I would start simple for v1.14, just get the tree view, you know, the indentations and the relationships captured here, and then just, you know, the type and name and call it done for 1.14, and we can always add more complexity later.
Yeah, that's also what I would propose, because I think adding like a mix of a table and this indentation stuff would be challenging for me, also given the time.
Absolutely.
But implementing like a simple tree function with like you said, the name and maybe the type or like the API version, whatever, it should be quite straightforward. And also, would you prefer like to build my own implementation of that, or is it good practice for you to also use modules like the tree print I linked, for example, which isn't really like, the last pull request there was a few months ago. What's your policy there, like of reusing modules or building your own modules?
Philip, you could probably comment on that as a, you know, current maintainer.
Yeah, we are not super strict about libraries and stuff. We are not super. It's not a negative answer by default to, as I saw in other contexts. maybe, I mean, the only point is, yeah, if the library feels abandoned and maybe doesn't have so much traction and stuff like that, it could be, and if the logic is not too complex to re-implement and just kind of vendor, it could be worth just re-implementing it directly in a library in Crossplane. That said, it's not going to touch Crossplane itself. It's in the CLI, so it could be fine. Still, it's gonna get into the Go module, so we're still going to have to deal with the dependencies, conflicts, still have to deal with vulnerability. So it's up to your discretion, but we try to be conservative, let's say.
Yep, yeah, that's a good answer. Thanks, man. That makes sense. Yeah.
Ooh, done.
Awesome. So yeah, so I think that then we've got some alignment then on the path to pursue there. And Jonas, like, once again, man, you know, first off, like, I think we're all really, really grateful and honestly pretty excited to see, you know, a community, someone from the community kind of getting involved here and contributing new code. That's really cool to see, and we're really grateful for that. So then, you know, as you're kind of continuing to add more functionality here and continuing to make progress, like, we definitely want to support you and make sure that you're getting, you know, the help that you need and you're not, you know, having to wait on us for too long. So we will keep an eye on these things and try to be pretty responsive to you and support you. But if you need an answer and you haven't gotten one, like, do absolutely feel free to send me a DM or send, you know, Philippe a DM also, and like, we will be pretty responsive, dude, because we really want to support you here.
Yeah, cool. Thanks a lot also for making this process so smooth. It's also my first open source contribution, so I think I'm equally excited at least.
Awesome, man. Yeah, that's great. And we should get you some Crossplane swag as well, to send you a little package. So I'll ask our folks about how to do that too.
Nice, awesome. Thank you.
Sweet. All right. So that's the PRs I knew that were open. Philippe, did you see other outstanding or open PRs that we need to talk about?
No.
Okay.
There were a few issues opened yesterday about errors reporting and minor UX things, which I wrote. I think I dropped a message about in the tracking issue. So maybe that's worth having a look at. But yeah, nothing major.
Okay, let's do that real quick then to see what we got. Oh, here we go.
Yep.
Okay.
That could be a little bit tricky to improve. It's about X package build not being super, let's say, talkative about and explicative about the errors on the examples when you build a package. It's just saying, yeah, there was an error in the YAML, that's it. It could be a little bit more helpful, but that's mostly UX.
Got it. I think so. I'm gonna probably be in favor here of polishing anything that we can. And so I'd err on the side of yeah, cool. Let's try to do this. And this is a good example of something I think that can be done after feature freeze.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, cool, the features are in place, the functionality is there, and now we can polish them and add bug fixes. So this could be done. We have 2 weeks to do this type of stuff. So that sounds reasonable to me. Of like, if we're getting feedback here, I want to be responsive to the feedback. I want to make sure that we're, you know, polishing it as well as we can. So that makes sense to try to do that too. And this one, did Pete try this with the new with X package stuff, or is this only for the old build commands?
I thought it was about the new one, but it's actually the old one. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, maybe we could verify what happens
Yeah.
with X package and figure that out too.
Yeah.
But cool. Okay. Great. So I wonder, it might make sense then to add like a tracking task list here for like polish, like fit and finish polish items too. So
Yep.
I'll do that then later to kind of just add those so we're tracking those appropriately as well. Okay, that makes sense to me. Okay, cool. So let's keep on moving along here because we're using up time efficiently today here. So let's look at Nick's feedback here. I saw that Nick put this and I've threw it to the agenda, but I didn't actually read it yet, Philippe. So you might have read it. So let's catch us up here, dude.
Yeah. So he tried this. It's a draft PR using the Crossplane CLI to build a function patch and transform, and it's just providing some feedback about the whole experience. And the thing he's complaining about is obviously app. So what previously we were calling app X package build is now Crossplane X package build, but we still have the same flags because, for example, you have a -- controller flag, which is used to specify the image to use as a starting point to build the package, which controller just doesn't make sense for functions. So that's one more reason to split a little bit more the build function from build control, from build provider and build configuration, and have separate commands, which was what we already had in the Crossplane build original commands. We already had build provider, build configuration. We missed to have a build function, which was actually an easy add because there is no logic change. It's just mostly flags and stuff like that. It's mostly an argument, the last bit. It's not really changing the logic of the building part. But yeah, we could rework and add back this additional thing. The only drawback of having the additional field for function provider and configuration and whatever we come up in the future is that if in the future we come up with something else, we need to actively support it and add a subcommand for that. Whereas if we keep it generic and call it just build, it's just going to work whatever. I mean, I think the interface is pretty clear. It's just an OCI image, and there is a pretty clear package interface. So doesn't feel like we really need to have this additional information about, is it a package, is it a provider, is it a configuration, is it a function? But then, yeah, controller doesn't make sense for functions. So how do we handle that? To be decided. And then, yeah, we knew the X package push command wasn't going to the part we embedded in Crossplane is not dealing with the authentication to the marketplace and the creation of a repository in the marketplace at the moment. We just brought in the push part without authentication and stuff. There is you can do that in other ways. So there is already a workaround for that, but we dropped that functionality at the moment, and we just brought in the push part. So do we want to add back the authentication part or don't? That's another open point. And then you have the Crossplane X package. Right now you use Docker build and then Crossplane X package build to build a function. Nick is suggesting having something more like Crossplane X package build, actually looking for a Docker file, or Crossplane X package build function and provider probably looking for a Docker file and actually building the image itself, like if it was a replacement for Docker itself from the beginning.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, so this is definitely really good feedback. And I think So I think that let's set aside the first one for a second. The second one here, Philip, you said there is a workaround to be able to push to the X package at upbound.io. Is that correct, or is it impossible right now?
Let me check. If I recall correctly, there was a CLI tool to do the authentication part, and then you could just push directly to the repository, but I have to Docker up something. I have to check the docs, but I recall there was something. But yeah, that's obviously a decisive thing to take a decision on that. So
exactly, dude. I think okay, because if there is a workaround like with a Docker tool or whatever that can, so that we can at least explain, like in the docs for the Crossplane docs, we could say, okay, here's how you push a package. You first do this auth step and then you push. That's okay. That's reasonable for 1.14. But if it's, if it is not possible to push to the marketplace, that I think that would be a miss for 1.14. I think that would be something that would be a big disappointment for us. So let's figure that out and come up with a story for it about what we could do there. Because if we've got that workaround, we could just use that. Otherwise, we'll need to figure out what to do about authentication and how to properly include that in an upstream tool, that should work with multiple registries, let's say. So, okay, so that makes sense there. We could follow up on that. This is nice. I think this would be nice to do, but we could ship 1.14 without it. You could do the Docker build or build your container image, whatever, with a separate step. And then you can do the build, of the package, the Crossplane package with the second step. That's okay. It'd be nice to do it all in one, but I would not hold 1.14 for that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so then this one, dude, I think, man, I've always thought it was slightly annoying to have like the, build provider, build configuration. It's kind of like an extra cognitive step there, but I absolutely see the value in it if, each package, if they end up having different flags. Like if they have different arguments, etc., then like having just one single one and you have to know which arguments to pass and which ones not to pass, like that's placing the cognitive burden on the user to figure that out, as opposed to, cool, you want to build a function, so build function, and then you have, the help function, the help output is specific to just what you need to build the function, and it's more clear that way. Then I am a fan of that, to have a more clear experience for the user that's more prescriptive and more obvious.
I totally agree. But then the point is, do we want to, which is the next point in the discussion, because if we could either add this additional field and say functions, provider and configurations, or we could do function build, function or provider build. Because if we do function build, it could be Crossplane alpha or beta function build. Otherwise, it's not. Otherwise, it's always going to be composition, Crossplane build functions, and that's it. There will be no way to put an alpha part in front of it or a beta part in front of it. Are we fine with that?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, because I want, like, what's the most clear for a user? What's like the most expected thing for a user, right? I think it would be it's not supported, right? It's like if something is an alpha or a beta command, that's at the top level, right? It's like Crossplane alpha, and then whatever functionality underneath that.
I mean, we could change that, but we agreed we liked the approach from the Google CLI, the GCP CLI, about having alpha, beta, and then the rest of the commands, and just moving stuff outside of the alpha sub command to promote it. We could think of having like a flag saying enable alpha commands, enable beta commands, and it's actually only if you set a flag you can use those commands, which is another approach I think I saw someone using, can't remember who, but I personally prefer the alpha one, alpha beta, the subcommand one, the subcommand approach.
Yeah, I do too.
So yeah,
Same.
I'd stick with that, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, so I think we're kind of running out of time, and I don't think I have it clear in my mind exactly what to do for naming here yet. So let's do this. Let's do a follow-up, like have a specific issue about this to like close, to get aligned and close on what we want, like the command structure that we want to ship with, and then we'll have that, you know, a focused discussion on that one and a decision on it, and then we can close that issue and then implement it basically.
Okay.
So let me just grab some actions here so we can follow up. So open discussion issue for command structure. Okay, and then, and Philippe, what were the high level topics in that real quick? That's like, I think we're closed on alpha and beta being a top level thing,
yes.
but like that is also
the
like X package build.
Yeah, the X package build. I mean, it's also linked to the other bullet. The current build and push. Do we want to keep them? Because right now we have build and push, and then X package build and X package push. So do we want to keep the current build and push? Do we want to deprecate those and keep X package, or do we want to do function build, provider build, and stuff like that? Or yeah, it's a mix. All these topics are kind of interconnected.
Yeah, they really are. Okay. Function provider configuration build. Okay. And which one?
Yeah.
What other one?
No, that's it. Because that's also
like
covering
function,
the dash.
Yeah, alpha for functions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or beta.
Alpha beta, right? Yeah, alpha beta for functions. Okay, so yeah, we need to kind of in one place figure this out, and we'll have to do that. We'll work on that asynchronously, and then we can close on that there. I think in general there was agreement about, you know, we don't have to tie ourselves to anymore to, you know, the queue control, you know, like verb and subject formats. So we have more, you know, freedom to have nested commands and, you know, just like structure that more matches the objects that we're dealing with, and we're not dealing only with a REST API like your kubectl does. So like I think there was general agreement with you and Nick on that.
Yeah. Yeah, if we decide to do so, maybe I can at least, even if not starting writing the actual code, but at least rework the current shape of the CLI to match the new, let's say, the new format we agreed upon, and see how it will change, so that we can discuss at least on that, seeing something written down. So I'll drop a message about that.
Yep. Okay, that sounds good. All right, sweet man. So we're over time now. So I think this then is the biggest follow-up to kind of like to close on that, and it will impact the way that we you know, what we're shipping here, the structure of it, and the experience of it. And then we still have these outstanding PRs as well that we're going to follow up on too. And oh yeah, and then I think we should capture Nick's feedback as actual issues. Now, and then we can triage, and we can do some of them as you know, in 1.14 and push some of them to later releases. But let's cap, because it's basically just a comment on a pull request in another repo right now. So getting them captured as an actual issue makes sense to me. So Philippe, I think I've got everything that I need to, like, with this context here, to open up the issue for that and take Nick's feedback too. So I think I can do both those, but I may ping you to kind of review what I'm writing up for that to make sure it all makes sense and I'm not missing anything.
Sure.
Okay. So then Ezgi and Jonas, anything else for you all? Let's move this one to backlog. Anything else that you all needed to talk about before we left today?
No, thank you. I think I'm all set for the tree functionality and the dot graph.
Awesome. That sounds great, Jonas. Thank you so much. And Ezgi, anything from you?
No, nothing from my side.
All right. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for a great meeting here. And then the next week, as we get towards let's change this feature freeze, will be exciting. So thanks for everybody pitching in. I really appreciate everyone's efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See y'all. Bye.
Cheers.